He was waiting for me in the living room when I first walked in. At first, I didn't recognize him. A short man with bad posture and thick glasses. He looked nervous when he saw me and muttered a simple, "Hey, detective." It took me a few seconds before I recognized him as the janitor from the school. "Hey, Roger, I thought we weren't meeting until later." He shook his head and, in an exasperated voice, said, No, I'm not. Could you please not do that?" "Do what?" "My name is Peter Cole." I looked at Jamie and said, "Do you mind giving us a minute?" Jamie nodded and left towards his bedroom. I took a chair and invited Peter to do the same. After he sat down and taken a moment to calm down, I asked him my questions. "What's up, Peter? What are you doing at my brother's kid's house? Should I be concerned?" Peter took off his glasses and wiped his eyes, forcing back tears. I didn't know exactly how to react, but I assumed time would tell, so I waited until he was ready to answer. After a few moments, he managed to get it together enough to say, "I really don't think I should be here. If he finds out I came to talk to you." "If who finds out?" "Roger. Who else?" For fuck's sake. "Look, Peter, is there a reason you're here? Because I'm still trying to figure out what actually happened to my niece, and bullshit distractions like this aren't helping." "You can't trust him." "Who?" "Roger. He acts like he's working for the common good, but in reality he's just a manipulator. He only cares about himself, and these favors he's collecting aren't what you'd expect. He hurts people. He can't be stopped." I took a deep breath and rubbed my temples. "Look, Peter, I'm not interested in role-playing or whatever the hell this is. Roger is a puppet, a toy, an inanimate object. If you've got some kind of anxiety or whatever, and can only communicate through the doll, then that's fine. You do you. But I've actually got shit to do. So unless you want to tell me whatever it was that Roger found out in Vanessa's case, then please kindly get the fuck out of this house." Peter stood up, muttering something about being sorry for wasting my time, and left. I felt defeated. Another dead end. The only thing left to do was start over. I took apart Vanessa's room piece by piece and spent a couple hours on her laptop. There was nothing out of the ordinary to be found in either case. Her cell phone was still plugged in next to her bed, but locked with a passcode. I made a few guesses using birthdays, but nothing worked. She was too smart for that anyway. I pocketed her cell with the intention of mailing it back to my guy in New Orleans, the one who could break into anything if the money's right, and I'd already decided to make that my priority number one. She didn't keep a diary, or a day planner, or anything that could have given me an idea of where to start. Her sock drawer had a stash of cash in the corner, about $350 in 10s and 20s, and a dime bag of pot. A post-it note near her bed had her most recent work schedule. Everything on her laptop was password protected, using a master password manager program. She was smart, but that's a level of caution I would categorize as paranoia. I had only seen that level of behavior in one other person, me, and I deal with some pretty sensitive stuff by profession. Her Facebook settings wouldn't let me see any of her posts, but Jamie was able to view her friends list on his account. I cross-referenced names with the school database, and under an hour, I had a checklist planned for the day. It was going to be difficult running these people down without the access to a phone. Never mind the fact that I'm a grown man trying to convince a bunch of teenagers to sit down and have a Q&A. Frankie was a tall, homely girl, and the best I could tell, Vanessa's best friend. I found her at the local pizza place where she worked and convinced her to give me a few moments of her time. She mostly corroborated what I already knew. Vanessa was saving up money, planning to move out of town, didn't have any secrets worth sharing, wasn't seeing anybody. But what? But she had this glow about her. Like, I knew there was somebody. They went out a few times, not like a date or anything, and she didn't really want to talk about it. Then a couple of weeks ago, it went away. Like they broke up. But not like they were even really official anyway, you know? Guy, girl, did you get a name? Any idea where they were from? No, she didn't think it was serious enough to talk about, I guess. They met online, I think. I caught her ex-boyfriend Brian as he was getting off his shift at the local garage. He was in a bit of a hurry to get to the deer stand, but agreed to answer a few quick questions. I asked about the mystery person in Vanessa's life, but Brian informed me that he absolutely didn't give any fucks about what she was up to since the breakup. What an asshole. But there wasn't any impression that he was lying. I found Hammonds, her English teacher, the one she had friended on Facebook, at his home on the other side of town. He was all too happy to cooperate. If it weren't for his rock-solid alibi on the night of her disappearance, taking his kids to see their dying grandmother the next day over, I might have been tempted to play things differently, but it quickly became clear that he had nothing to hide. He showed me the letter of recommendation that he had written for Vanessa's batch of college applications. We spent a few minutes talking and drinking coffee. He agreed that the cult story was bullshit, but he had heard some rumors going around school that she was seeing someone new. Of course, a middle-aged, overweight English teacher wasn't exactly the key holder of information when it came to students' personal lives. It wasn't a total waste, though, as he pointed me to my next lead, Morgan Hardy. According to Hammonds, everyone knew Morgan had a thing for Vanessa. He was an awkward kid, a year younger than her, but he still asked her out on more than one occasion, and was turned down on more than one occasion. He wasn't on her list of friends, but Hammonds knew where I could find him. There weren't any cars in the driveway at Morgan's house. I knocked and rang the doorbell, then waited around 5 minutes and circled around back and broke in through an open window. I didn't have time to play it legal, and besides, this was hardly the worst thing I've done all day. It wasn't hard trying to figure out which bedroom was his. There was an oversized Fight Club poster thumbtacked to the closed door like an edgy teenager beacon. I pushed it open and immediately realized that I wasn't in Kansas anymore. There was a mirror on the wall covered with pictures of Vanessa. Some looked like they were taken off of social media, and others looked like they were snapped from a voyeur's point of view. The pictures continued, all over the walls, thumbtacked in random intervals at more or less eye level. The room was a mess. Clothes, books, dishes stuck wherever they would fit, which made the search all the more difficult. I checked in the obvious places and hit gold right off the bat. Under his mattress next to a one-hitter and a baggie of weed was a girl's yellow t-shirt, a match for the one Vanessa wore when she was last seen. I could hear Morgan's car blaring that god-awful excuse for music as he pulled in the driveway, giving me plenty of time to sneak away the way I had come in. But that's the last thing in the world I wanted to do. Instead, I closed the bedroom door and waited for him in his closet, with the door cracked just enough for me to see out. I needed to see him before he saw me. I needed to see his reaction to know for sure. It didn't take long for him to get inside. He shut the bedroom door behind him and made a beeline straight for his computer desk, but stopped halfway and muttered, "What the fuck?" He was taller than I expected, with at least an inch on me. Long, greasy black hair and the beginnings of a patchy beard. Where he stood, he had his back to me. By the time he turned around, there I was with my gun pointed right at him, ready for the kill shot. He fell to the ground, covering his face, screaming, "Oh, please, man! Oh, God, don't hurt me, please!" "Shut up!" I yelled at him. "What do you want? Oh, God, dude, just take whatever you want, but please don't hurt me." That was the last thing he said before he started sobbing. "Phone. Give me your phone." What? He blubbered. "Now!" "Sorry!" He dug the phone out of his pocket and held it out for me. "Put it on the bed!" I yelled. He nodded and tossed the phone onto his dirty, unmade mattress. I kept the gun locked on his forehead and walked over to grab it. "Why did you put all these—" "Shut up!" I screamed, rushing over to the spot where he had collapsed into a pathetic heap and smacking him across the face with my weapon. It worked. He shut right the hell up. But just to make sure, I pressed the tip of my gun against his face and put the fear of God into him. "If you say one more word, just one more single word to me, I'll paint these walls red. Not if you understand." He understood and closed his eyes and fell onto his side in the fetal position, crying. I felt awful doing this to the poor kid, but it was the only way to convince whoever set this whole thing up that I was buying their little fabrication. He had almost ruined it asking why I had put up so many pictures of Vanessa. I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I would have to be a complete moron to see an orgy of evidence like this and believe it. When I first came into town, I made it a point to look up and memorize the sheriff's personal cell phone number for just such a situation as this. I picked up Morgan's phone off the bed and dialed. Clyde answered, and I'm sure he was confused as hell when I explained that I had found Vanessa's killer and told him where he could find Morgan. The look on the kid's face when I first walked into the room proved that he had no idea where all these pictures had come from. But the whole thing was so nice and neat. The perfect, horrible ending to the story, complete with a villain, motive, and a resolution that would satiate any pain-in-the-ass detective asking too many questions. He told me to stay put, and I lied and promised him I would. 5 minutes later, I was in the Honda, driving as fast as I could without raising any suspicion and trying to decide where the hell I was actually going. The story was now taking shape in the worst possible way. Vanessa had to be tied to the town secrets somehow. Whatever entity set me up this morning and made the truck disappear was now adapting their strategy, offering me a way out. All I had to do was take it. But I'd already decided that there was nothing that was going to make me stop until I either figured out what happened to Vanessa or I was 6 feet under. I tried to think while I drove aimlessly around that shithole of a town, but couldn't come up with anything actually worthy of calling a plan. After a few minutes on the back roads, I came up to an old mom-and-pop hardware store and remembered what Peter told me earlier, vis-a-vis Roger, about them framing me for some kind of open case in town. After what I had seen, I had no doubt that his warning was genuine. So I decided to cover my ass and pulled into an empty parking lot and go shopping. 30 minutes later, I had a Boy Scout basket of supplies for nearly any situation. Duct tape, pipe cleaner, rope, pliers, hammer, gloves, flashlight, JB weld, and various other odds and ends. When it comes to the unknown, there's no such thing as overprepared. It was already getting dark by the time I left the store, and I made the mistake of feeling optimistic. That didn't last too long. I saw a figure sitting in the passenger seat of Vanessa's Honda right away. There was no mistaking him. The figure, dressed in all camo, green paint smeared on his face, staring forward with a lifeless gaze. A million thoughts crashed their way through my mind at once, but by some miracle, I managed to grab onto the only one that mattered. Be calm, be rational, think this through. Facts. Use the facts. There was a man sitting in my car, waiting for me. Looks exactly like, what's his name? Ned. But he died earlier today. I checked. How long was I inside? Half an hour? How did they find me? How did they sneak the body into the car without me noticing, and why? Why? Of course I knew why. I couldn't take any chances. Even if Morgan fell for Vanessa's disappearance, I still had a loose end, which means this is a setup. Which means the police will be here any second. Think, think, think. Now, options, go. I could run, flee the scene, call it in later that the car was stolen, but by now it would be covered in my DNA, and if they found the dead body, it would get linked back to me. What kind of story could I tell in defense? I literally killed him, so the truth was out. Nah, forget that. Next option. Get in the car and gun it. Anywhere. Leave fucking town if I need to. I can drop the body in the parking lot and no. The old man working the cash register will tie me to this place. Okay, take the body with me. The cops will pull you over. Then how do you explain this? Well, the cops aren't here yet, so that leaves me with one option. I dropped my things and raced to the trunk of the car, popped it open. Then, opened the car door and checked to make sure. Yep, he was just as dead as the last time I saw him. The only difference was now he had a bullet hole in his forehead. Whoever put him in the seat made it a point to splatter blood all over the dash and carpet, but I didn't have the luxury of time. This was going to need to be fast and messy. I yanked him out of the seat and dragged him over my shoulder around the back. I shoved him into the truck and slammed it shut with just a second to spare before the deputy's cruiser pulled into the parking lot. I took a few deep breaths and tried to steady my nerves. Then, when that wasn't working, I lit a cigarette and backed to where I dropped my things. Evening, Mr. Riggin. I tried not to look guilty as fuck when I turned to face the rookie deputy that I had just met yesterday. Franklin, right? As I picked up my purchases and started for the car. He followed behind me. Sure is a small town, huh, deputy? It sure is, he said. I opened the back door and put the bags on the seat, keeping it casual and cool. I leaned against the car and slowly continued to smoke the coffin nail. Then offered one to Franklin, who shook his head and said, "Nah, I'm okay. Been quit for 5 years." I put the pack away and said, "You're a better man than me." After a second, I could see Franklin was getting nervous, trying to look over my shoulder into the car. "Something wrong, Franklin?" I asked point blank. Nah, we're good." His poker face was just as bad today. "Well," I said, "any new developments with Middleton? I know you're not supposed to say anything, but off the record. Does it look like he's any closer to cracking?" "I doubt it." I finished my smoke and put the cherry out on the heel of my boot, then tucked the butt back into the cigarette pack as Franklin watched. "Look, I'm flattered by the attention, but something tells me you're not here for my world-class conversation skills. Something on your mind?" Franklin finally relaxed and let out a laugh. "You got me. Somebody called into the station to say there were a man outside the hardware shop trying to sell drugs out of the trunk of a Honda." I returned his laugh. "No shit. They say what he looked like?" Franklin went on to describe me to a T, down to the black scrapes on my face. Franklin and I shared another laugh. "Guess I better get going," I said, "before anyone gets the wrong idea, huh?" "Yeah, but real quick, why don't you let me take a look inside your trunk, just so I can put it in my report, huh?" I shook my head and said, "Sorry, Franklin. You'll have to put in your report that I refuse to open it without a warrant. You know, it's a principle kind of thing." Franklin nodded and said, "Well, I guess you better be going then, huh?" I felt a deep sense of relief that only lasted for half a second before the radio on Franklin's belt crackled to life with the sound of a loud and urgent voice. "All units, be on the lookout for a Honda Accord, plate number," then went on to describe Vanessa's license plate. "Be advised, the driver is Eric Riggin. He is likely armed." I tried to laugh again, but Franklin started reaching for his gun, so I put a right hook across his cheek hard enough to drop him and split my knuckle open. It wasn't enough to knock him out, though, but his head hit the concrete and he started groaning. I went straight for his gun, wrestled it free from his belt, and pitched it onto the roof of the store. Then, while he was still regaining his bearings, I took the cuffs out and put one on his left wrist before he snapped back into action and jumped on top of me, throwing wild punches and screaming. He was a terrible fighter, and relying entirely on adrenaline. I guarded my face until he tired himself out, then grabbed him by the wrist and gave him a solid kick to the side of the knee. He dropped again and I put him on his stomach and twisted his arms behind his back just enough to connect the handcuffs. Boom. I jumped to my feet and turned to see where the sound had come from. It was the old man with white hair, the cashier from inside the hardware store. He was standing there with a shotgun in his hands aimed in the air. "Now that was just a warning shot," he said with a slight quiver in his voice. "Next one's for you if you don't let him go right now." As he said that, he pointed the gun at me. "That's a Hatfield break-action shotgun," I said. "Yeah, so what?" he answered back, trying to sound intimidating but failing. "So, I'm not an idiot, old man. That thing is a single shot, and you just fired your entire payload with that warning." He trembled slightly but refused to lower his weapon. So, I gave him a little incentive, pulling out my own piece and aiming it right back at him. This one, however, has plenty of warning shots left in it. He tossed his shotgun down and held his hands up and made his way to his knees. "Good," I said as I circled around the front of Vanessa's car. That idiot's gunshot would be attracting every bored law enforcement officer or agent in the whole damn town. I needed to get somewhere else, fast. I would like to thank the patrons at my $10 or above tier: Alejandro C., Official Jerboa, and Chaos X. If you want to be mentioned at the end of every video, go down to the Patreon down below. Thank you.